Okay? Well.
Thank you.
Mark. Okay, let's look at secondary tenses. One part of my problem here got time trying to make this a little more clear than what I was doing yesterday. Problem sheet, I have these secondaries. I have the secondary inflection. I listed the tenses, imperfect, aorist, perfect, second, with perfect. Unested, unested, concept. See the chart is set up with omicron epsilon connecting vowel, and I've got an alpha standing next to it so that we can drop the omicron epsilon in favor of alpha. So I define first aorist, active, middle, and passive, and I wrote you some notes. Note 1. In the indicative. In the indicative, you got the problem of having first and third form that has a life. This problem persists. Problem persists throughout the declension. One would have thought that this caused so much problems in the active and in the active that the passive of the aorist would have used those secondary middle passive endings rather than theologically coming back to these and maintaining the problem. So now it doesn't work that way. The first person singular on these aorists does not pick up this minute. That allows it to pick it up in the third plural and have different forms for first and third instead of identical forms as in the third. As soon as you do not pick up the new here, there is no ending here. Then you've got a duplicate form here and here. So the third person singular treats this former connecting vowel as if it were an ending. So it forms an elu sa, and I'll pick up the elu sa, pick up the singular, elu se. Then it's just elu simon, elu sate, elu son. No problem here. It's in the middle. The only problem with this middle is that the middle passive does not have a consonant either. What it has is that omicron epsilon vowel that has been lengthened in the absence of the consonant. In this instance, what is coming together here is the second person. What you've got is anytime anybody occurs with an omicron, epsilon, or an omega, anytime any vowel occurs with an omicron, with an O sound, this O sound predominates. These two genuinely contract to produce that. Looks like a future. This is the opposite. That's really the only problem that one has in the middle, because all of the forms, as you can see at the top, with the exception of that second singular, have discrete forms. So it's just elu sane, elu so, where that's the problem. Elu sate, elu sama, elu sas, passive. First note is important. All aorist tenses. First aorist, which have regular stems like Lewis. Second aorist, which we'll look at in a minute, which have irregular stems. Both of these attempt to construct the aorist passive voice by utilizing the passive infix theta eta. That is to say, regular verbs and irregular verbs, when they try to make a passive voice in the aorist tense, attempt to use theta eta as a passive infix. B, the aorist tenses using the secondary active infix for the passive suffix. We expect them to use the middle passive suffix. We expect what we expect. First aorist is regular. We expect to augment the regular stem I call on that other sheet the primary stem, the stem that goes back to the fragment. We expect here, after the theta eta infix of passive voice, these endings, we expect to see a form like this. There is no form like that. There is no form like that. This theta eta means passive, so strong. A regular stem here means first aorist, so strongly when it is augmented. This says secondary. The regular stem is like preached, you know, it's past tense. That says passive. Now the index that are picked up here are the active. Unlike the active side, the new is picked up. As a result, just the opposite happens in this third. By picking the noon up here, you don't have the duplicate form here. And just pick it up, the noon here. The edge of this, which would have been far more logical, like that. And it's not happening. It's not happening. If, however, you don't pick up the noon there, got a duplicate form here. Solve that by treating the epsilon as an ending. We're still going to have, won't have a problem here, plural. If you go at it the other way and pick the noon up, the problem eliminates. Problem there. Problem's going to be right here. Follow the system. These two forms are enough. You will see a form like that occasionally. What you see most frequently is the sigma alpha, since this is the first aorist after all. Alright. Did not eliminate the duplicate forms. First. What I did on this sheet line. I wish I hadn't put that. I wish I had left the eta on. You can take it off and put a theta in. See, on this bumper chart, I don't like that, so I look at it. Either put a theta eta sign, which is what this is, or just put sigma alpha in it as a way of sort of targeting. Okay, so the look at D. Get back to where I started at. At times, the phonetic value of the final consonant of the stem, that's what this chart over here with the theta is all about. At times, the phonetic value of the final consonant of the stem causes the theta of the passive infix to be lead, causes the theta to drop out. In these cases, the resulting form is a form minus the theta. It's called a second aorist passive without regard for whether the stem is regular or irregular. 3 examples.
Did you have first aorist active, second aorist passive?
Yes, sir. Look at Lua. Its passive is a Lu thing. That is a first aorist passive indicative, first person singular. I'm calling that a first aorist passive because it is augmented. It does have a regular stem. It has the secondary active ending, but I am calling that a first aorist passive because there's a theta eta attached. Look at grapho. Aorist passive is a grapheme. That word has an augment, and it has a regular stem. Just like Lua, with the exception that a final spot causes a theta phonetically to drop out, with the result that the theta eta, which is attached to the suffix here, becomes simply eta, and the noon is the end. That is called a second aorist passive indicative first person singular. The reason it's called a second aorist passive is because there's no theta there. The stem is as regular as Luo is regular. It is the end of the stem coming together with the theta, where the phonetic value causes the theta to drop out. You get this weird form. Look at Lego. Lego is a word we know, and its aorist passive is irregular thing. The stem is irregular. One may say the real answer to that is Lego at the present is irregular. But if you know Lego, you are expecting Lego to work to decline like on the order of Lua. However, the base stem of Lego is era, epsilon, rho, eta. You could say that's irregular. Note that it has a theta eta passive infix. On the basis of the theta eta passive infix, that is classified as a first aorist. Now you see why the aorist passive is one of the 6 principal parts. what I would have expected from Lego, and I think what all of us would have expected, we would have been thinking logically. I would have expected this. There's the stem, augment the stem with a theta, eta, and a nu, and then I would have expected a contraction. The difference is that this is really not the primary stem of that word. Look at Lego on page
262.
62. Future of Lego arrow. Note that its aorist form, which is the third form, is not a first aorist or second aorist. Its perfect form is epsilon iota with a rho. Perfect active and perfect middle is epsilon iota rho eta u alpha. Look at the sixth form, which steers one way or another. That's either array thing or array. Do it both ways. It has a theta eta facet. Does that make any sense? The question is how we're going to classify these things. It would be nice if all irregular past tense verbs had an irregular way, had a second way on forming a passage. So everything would be nice and neat all the way along. Unfortunately, with this aorist, again, it is the most conversational. Regular verbs work like luo. That stem is there, and you can take all the accoutrements, the aorist tense off, and reconstruct the word back as the present. Okay? That it works all the way through. Other words, however, are irregular at the point of the aorist, lose this stem here, or another stem that's in place. However, you get to the point of constructing the passive voice in the aorist tense, regardless of whether the word is regular or irregular. Theta, eta, passive infix is attached to a stem, regular stem or irregular stem. There are occasions where the way in which the stem ends causes the theta to drop out. There are phonetic difficulties with putting a theta on just any stem. The theta drops out, and you need something to call that. So we call it the second aorist. There is no such thing as a second aorist, except when that is dropped out. So they do no things. What happened to Lego's augments? They're there. They just hit you. Question.
So the reason we have be able to separate these out is there's a way of, there's charts to go to that have it divided like this, or?
Your lexicon, when it gives you a listing, will list the principal parts, like this is listed in
Just
the
like in this, that.
And it's important to note the order. The first one is the what?
Present.
Present. The second one is the
Future.
third one is the
Aorist.
Is it first aorist or aorist?
It's just the aorist. If it's the first aorist, they'll put that there. If it's the second aorist, they'll put it there. The fourth and fifth ones belong to the perfect tense. It's perfect active and perfect middle. The sixth form is the aorist. Now, the reason why I mentioned holds off. We started out, he was giving us the future. We had a future active and a future middle, and then he did not give us passive until after he got to the aorist. The reason for that is that I shall loose. I shall loosen myself. I shall be loose. Okay? Let's say I lose. I lose more myself. I'm sorry. I lose for myself. I was saving future and past. Both share this passage subject. They both share sickness. That sounds to me punctiliar. I shall lose. Different from saying I shall be in the process of losing. You make that sound linear, you have to paraphrase. The sigma probably means punctiliar. The future probably emerged out of this past tense. Note, in the secondary tenses, you've got a linear past and a punctiliar past. Here's punctiliar. In the primary tenses, we got a linear present. Here, linear present. I am losing. If you want a punctiliar primary, take the punctiliar secondary, take the augment off. You're not talking about then, you want to talk about then. Well, primary ending.